Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by law enforcement professional and author Rodney. Rodney uses his experience in law enforcement, which is almost 2 decades. He uses that experience for writing his books. So we're going to be talking to him about everything that he's up to and also some of the hobbies he enjoys doing. So Rodney, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been working in law enforcement in New York State for the past 18 years. And most recently, I self-published my debut novel on October 29th. And I use a lot of my personal experiences and my interactions um, with other law enforcement professionals as kind of a basis for the characters and for the setting. And I use a lot of very personal, a lot of personal experiences to put a sense of reality and a sense of realism into the world that I'm building with my law enforcement characters.
Well, what made you want to decide to get into law enforcement?
Um, Originally, I was just looking for a job. Got married when I was 22 years old, and my wife and I moved from New York to California. We lived in the Los Angeles area, and being young, just out of college, I thought that people would be tripping over themselves to pay me a lot of money to do whatever because I had a college degree, and I found out very quickly that that wasn't the case. So I was working. I worked a couple of jobs while I was out there, but the job that was most promising when it came to salary was joining the LAPD. So I kind of looked into that, and being a large agency, they don't really have like a civil service test that you go in and you pass, and you have to wait on different things. They kind of have a continual recruiting process. So I just started the process, and I was going through it. And as I started meeting more and more people, doing my background investigation, and people that were working out there, I started kind of actually liking the the idea of the job. I started reading a lot of true stories or memoir type stuff by other law enforcement officers. And after a year, we moved back to New York, and I started looking actively at becoming a police officer in back here in New York. Then I started where a lot of police officers started. I actually started working in corrections, and I worked as a New York State correction officer for 2 years before taking a couple of local county tests. And I ended up in 2008 getting hired by a local sheriff's office, and I've been there ever since for the almost 16 and a half years.
Okay, well, congratulations on that. You,
Thank you.
you also like to hang out in the mountains, so tell people about the mountains, the particular mountain you really love so much and things you've done and why you like it so much.
The mountains ironically became a kind of a place of a lot of reflection and kind of a newer thing in the last 10 years. I'd never hiked. I'd never been on a mountain. My own experience prior to a couple years ago was I remember as a Boy Scout, we had to hike up a mountain. I don't remember what it was, but it was cold, it was snowy, and it was miserable. And I got to almost the top, and I was about to quit when some of the other guys kind of, bullied me into going all the way up. So I didn't really have a good history with it. But my wife started looking into hiking and all these trails up in the Catskill Mountains um, of New York State, and we learned about the Catskill 3500s, which are 35 mountains in the Catskills that are over 3,500 feet. And it was kind of a challenge. They have a club, and you can get a number when you finish doing everything. So we started doing that, and we would make trips up there. And the Catskills are a vast area. They actually are in, I think, three different counties in New York State, and there's certain groups of them you have to go to. But a large portion of them are in Greene County, in the town of Hunter and the town of Windham, which are adjoining towns, up there. And we spent a lot of time camping up there originally, and doing these hikes on the weekends, and making trips to hit these mountains. And the more and more we would go up there, you'd have to go. We'd go in the spring, we'd go in the summer, we'd go in the fall, and then um, we started taking little trips between Christmas and New Year's, after we had our child. My daughter would stay with my in-laws, and we would go up and kind of make it a little getaway. And we started looking more and more about buying a house up there, and really really just fell in love with the whole area. So when it came time to writing my fiction, law enforcement was the one end of things, but this place that I had fallen in love with, the Catskills, the town of Hunter, the town of Windham, the mountains and the views, and all these different things were to me were just a number one, a beautiful setting to have, but also just kind of this mysterious, very secretive place. Uh, it just seemed, it seemed very, very apt for a place to put all these things.
Talk about some of the most interesting things that you've faced or that you've experienced throughout your law enforcement career.
Um, Knock on wood, I've never really been anything too dangerous. Mostly, my career has just kind of had its ups and downs, which is what I try to portray in the novel. Is that I started out as a like I said, a correction officer originally, and that was one experience to be, incarcerated, and speaking to, having regular conversations with people who are incarcerated, and then going to the working patrol and having these encounters with people on traffic stops, or in New York State, the sheriff's office is responsible for civil process and for orders of protection. So, you're going into all these different situations and meeting all these different people. Um, and then from that experience, I moved and became an investigator, and I worked, for about 3.5, 4 years as an investigator, primarily working fraud cases. I started working, with a number of other agencies, both federal, state, and local, and looking into these somewhat complex, sometimes not very complex, but just easy ways of getting around the system, and finding, discovering where people were not following the rules, and at least holding them accountable, and letting the justice system kind of correct for that. And I also did computer forensics for a little while, doing during that also, and worked a bunch of different cases, involving, again, some fraud, but also dealing with, child pornography. I did a big case with a local agency on that. And then after that, I became a supervisor, which was, to me, it happened at about the midway point of my career now. And like I said, I've been in 16 and a half years. I've been a supervisor for nine of them, or nine plus. And that was really, I think, where my career, my life kind of changed. I had taken all the experiences I had before that, and now I was, supervising people who had been, um, people I looked up to. I actually initially supervised, my old partner was one of my initial subordinates when I got promoted, and he was probably 8 or 9 years older than me, but now I'm his boss. So that was a big change. Plus, bringing in new folks and really teaching them, how law enforcement worked, how the sheriff's office worked, and trying to become a little bit of a mentor and becoming a little bit and learning the leadership skills that you really need to thrive in that. And then with being at that level, also the kind of going in and out of the political aspects of being at a being in a job and being a supervisor, finding that I was kind of stuck with um, some difficult situations personally, and having to kind of smile and grit my teeth through some of these more negative situations. Something like being stuck on midnights as a supervisor for almost 4 years, and then transitioning from that to working strictly afternoons, and the different things that go along with the different personalities. Before getting to the position where I am now, where I'm one of the most senior supervisors, and now I push paper all day. I don't directly really supervise anybody, and I'm responsible more for getting things done administratively. So it's there's been a progression and a big change in where my career's gone.
Let's take a quick break.
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
Tell us about your book, to tell us where we can purchase it and what readers can expect when they read it.
Well, sure. So I'll start off. You can purchase the book through my website, rlcarpentierwriter.com. That is a printed copy. I sign each one personally. I personalize it as much as I can. It is also available through Amazon and through Kindle. So people can go there also. Obviously, I prefer, a little bit more of the direct approach. Again, more personal. You can get on my website. You can sign up for a bunch of the different things that I have there. That's that information. But essentially, the book is the first in a trilogy, and it really explores a brand new police officer who is starting out trying to learn how to do the rookie things, how to stop a car, how to talk to people, how to interact with folks. And in the middle of that, he is approached by a podcaster. That's why I love going on podcasts. You always get to drop the name of, you get to drop the podcast thing and the connection to you hardworking folks. But this true crime podcaster approaches him and gives him some information that he never knew. And that information involves that the main character's name is Mike. His father had been a police officer and had risen to the rank of chief before he had passed away at an untimely age. And he finds out that his father, when he was a rookie, had been involved in a homicide case involving a young woman who had been left at one of these overlooks. Again, takes place up in the Catskills. The body of the young woman was discovered by some hikers, and he was the first law enforcement officer there. And this is something that Mike has never heard before. He didn't ever had a really good relationship with his father. So then he begins kind of getting the background on it when one night Mike's working regular patrol and he gets called to the trailhead of the same overlook, and he comes upon his own dead body and his own murder investigation. And he starts to think, that it's a little bit too much of a coincidence, and now he is looking to try to tie these two cases together, and it's kind of his adventures, misadventures, and the you know, some of his naivete works for him and works against him at the same time, but he's able to crack the 40-year-old case open, and while still working on trying to figure out his own at the same time.
Why did you decide to write this book?
I decided to write this book. The idea for this book came when I was working as on midnights as a sergeant, and I had been working since 3 o'clock the previous afternoon, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm almost 12 hours into a very long day. Was tired, and when you get that tired and nothing's really happening, you kind of you doze. You start hearing things, seeing things, and trying to keep myself as alert as I could. I was sitting in our squad room when this idea popped in my head, and the original question that I asked myself, or the original thing that popped in my head, was, what if you were adopted? You knew where you were adopted, but as you started to look into the background of your parents, you found out that your mother was the victim of this cold case homicide. Nobody's solved. Nobody knows who she is, and now you've got this new information, and what do you do with that? And so that was kind of the impetus behind it. So I started kind of playing with the idea again to keep myself kind of awake, and we and as I kind of started to sketch out some of the ideas and develop some of the early characters and where I wanted to do with it, I was excited because it was such a new thing in my head. And ironically, we were going up to go hiking that afternoon, and um, I left work, went home, got a nap in, and we went up to hike. And I remember describing my idea to my wife, and she's like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds interesting." But I'm like, I just felt differently, that I wanted to do something with it. And for a little bit of context, this was in May of 2022, toward the end of May. My father had passed away in April, um, so about 6 weeks prior to that. And for some reason, um, all these other feelings and all these other ideas started kind of creeping into my head around this same story. And I said, I wanted to actually put this down, and I actually wanted to kind of develop the story and see where it went. So I kind of put my nose to the grindstone, and I really started kind of dusting off some old skills and dusting off um, some things I had learned, in college, about writing and about literature. And I started kind of really trying to formulate the story when I eventually wound up on YouTube and in podcast land, and really found a lot of very intelligent, very, very smart people who helped kind of change my perspective on how I was writing, and really kind of inspired me to bring on a new process so that I could get the ideas out of my head and onto a computer screen. And from there, it became kind of a mission for me in the last year to not only get this story out of me, but I wanted to get it out to people also. Um, so once I had the drafts done, it was about learning how to publish or self-publish or what I needed to do. And I spent most of last year working on that, and got to kind of an inflection point in August, where I was at a convention, and I was meeting all these writers and these publishers and stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to self-publish this thing. I'm going to put it out. And so I just chose to put it out on October 29th. And um, it's been out in the world. And I'm just trying to get people, trying to get people's ears through situations like this, so that they can get their eyes on it and have that experience.
Tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
Well, it's actually a very exciting time for me personally. I just finished the second book of the trilogy, um, and basically my process is to get it out and get it done. I don't go back and edit. I don't look back. I keep going forward, always forward. And I um, got it done, and basically you kind of got to forget about it for a couple weeks. So kind of in that process right now where it's sitting and kind of fermenting and maturing a little bit. I'm going to go back to that. I have an editor already lined up to start working in the middle of February. So I'm really looking at probably a summer release, maybe late summer release for book two. So that's really exciting. And then I just started a Patreon page, looking for some people who want to get a little bit more invested. And through the Patreon, I'm going to be releasing some extra material, stuff that I had cut out of the first book, which I don't think I've mentioned. The book is called Our Lady of the Overlook. I don't think I mentioned that. I cut a bunch of stuff out of it because the original way I was writing it was having two characters in a kind of a parallel storyline, and they were going to meet in the middle. And as I wrote it, I didn't like the way it was developing, so I cut one of the characters to just introduce her in the middle of the novel, as opposed to kind of following the two of them. So I have all this material about this very important character, just not the main character of of the trilogy. And I'm going to start releasing kind of episodic, kind of serialized chapters of that while we kind of gear up towards the release of book two, so that people can get a little bit of more context and a little bit more involved in that. So that's another project I'm working on. And once we're done with that, I have another group of serialization stuff that I'm working on. That's a little bit less developed. And then, of course, after book two gets out, I want to get book three out. Plus, I have at least two other non-fiction works that I'm working on. There are some old ideas, again, taking place in the Catskills, but these are a little bit more historical fiction, where one takes place in 1941, and the other one takes place in the late-ish 60s, followed by two nonfiction works that I'm working on. One involves the 1981 Brinks robbery in Rockland County, New York, where I reside, where I live. Two police officers and a Brinks guard were killed by some robbers, and I want to talk about the impact of the community on the community, because a lot of the people that were here in 1981 are still here, and they knew these folks, and these were real people. And the second project was a little bit closer to the Catskills, and involves a woman who left her job at 11 o'clock at night back in 2002, had a 10-minute drive home, and never showed up home. And to this day, they don't know what happened to her. And there's a lot of theories and a lot of things. I have a connection to the family in a distant way, and I'd like to kind of put that out in a book also. So I have a lot of projects. I have a lot of stuff that, I'm working on right now. So I'm really excited, and I'm gearing up to turn the writing thing into my career post law enforcement, which sadly or happily will be over in the fall of 2028. So I'm just trying to gear up so that all these things are ready to go when I retire.
Okay, well, so listeners can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your website again.
Yep, it's R.L. Carpentier. Carpentier spelled Carpentier. And it's rlcarpentierwriter.com. Again, I'm on Patreon. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I'm trying to throw out a lot of the social media stuff just to keep people engaged. I have a lot of people who knew me who are good fans, and I have a lot of new fans that are coming aboard every day. So happy to have as many people, along for the ride as possible.
All right, close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listener.
Sure. One of the things I came up with actually through another podcast interview was this idea of early is on time is late, and late is not acceptable. It was a family mantra. Again, going back to my father, he used to say it to me all the time, and I always live by that. I hate being late. I hate running late. I hate showing up, right on time. I guess my wife would my wife would complain that we're always early and maybe too early. So I started really thinking about this during one of the podcasts, and it kind of became a mantra for me that me personally, that being early is being prepared, and being late is being unprepared. And if you're showing up right on time, you're still not prepared. And I've been kind of using that as a background for what I'm doing with my with my transition here from law enforcement to a writer. Is I didn't wait till I was ready to retire and say, okay, now I'm going to start this thing. I'm trying to be early. I'm trying to make those plans, trying to foresee where I want to go, and at least act. Because if you don't act on something, you're always going to have these regrets. You're always going to have these things you wish you had done. So, so it's kind of become my personal motto. I'm trying to turn it into my brand a little bit. I started to get it onto some merchandise. I have some coffee cups. Figured everybody has tea or coffee, so put it on a mug, and it just says early is on time is late, late is not acceptable. So it's kind of who I am to a degree also, and want to spread that message of just being prepared for life, and being prepared for what the next thing to come at you is going to be.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, R.L. Carpentier, writer.com. Please be sure to check out his book, his writings, keep up with everything that he's up to. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite podcast app. Follow the show, check it out. Leave us a review, share it. If you have any guest or suggestion topics, Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. Rodney, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.